For a long time, I thought my biggest problem was that I cared too much.
Hi, I'm Irene. Welcome to Beyond Survival. This is a space where we slow down and learn how to feel safe in our own lives again.
That was the story. I care too much. I think about people too much. I worry. I give too much. And honestly, it's not a terrible story. It even sounds flattering. If you're going to have a flaw, caring too much sounds like a pretty good one. Until I started noticing something. The people I admired most were not exhausted. They weren't constantly managing everyone's emotions. They weren't lying awake replaying conversations. They weren't spending hours wondering whether somebody was upset with them. And yet, they were still kind. Actually, they were often kinder than I was. So that confused me. Because if exhaustion was the price of kindness, why weren't they paying it? Then one day, I noticed something. When they gave something, they wanted to give it. Simple. But I had never really considered it. They helped because they wanted to help, not because they felt trapped. They said yes because they meant yes. And when they said no, they meant no. There wasn't an invisible negotiation happening underneath. No resentment, no scorekeeping, no secret hope that the other person would notice how much they had sacrificed. Just honesty. And that's when an uncomfortable thought entered my mind. What if a lot of what I called kindness was actually fear? Not all of it, but enough of it to matter. Fear of disappointing people, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen as selfish. Suddenly, things started to make sense. Because fear and kindness can look identical from outside. Imagine two people helping a friend move house. Both show up, both carry boxes, both spend the entire afternoon helping. From the outside, they're doing exactly the same thing. But inside, they're having completely different experiences. One person is happy to be there. The other person wanted to say no 3 days ago. One leaves feeling connected. The other leaves feeling drained. One gave freely. The other paid with resentment. Same behavior, different energy. I think that's where a lot of confusion comes from. People look at their behavior and assume they understand the motivation. I helped, so I must be kind. I said yes, so I must be generous. I put them first, so I must be loving. Or maybe you were afraid. That's a much harder question. Because once you start asking it, you see things differently. You start noticing the moments when your body already knows the answer. The invitation arrives, and before your mind speaks, your shoulders tighten. The phone rings, and your stomach sinks. Someone asks for a favor, and your first emotion isn't generosity, it's pressure. Your body often knows long before your mind catches up. The problem is most of us were trained to ignore that information. We're taught to be logical, reasonable, polite. Meanwhile, the body is sitting there the entire time saying, I don't want to do this. Not because you're lazy or selfish, because something doesn't feel aligned. I remember speaking to a woman who told me she felt guilty every time she rested. Not every now and then, but every single time. Even on vacation, even during weekends, even when lying on the couch. There was always a voice. You should be doing something. You should be helping someone. You should be productive. You should be useful. Eventually, I asked her, when did resting become something you had to earn? She stared at me because she didn't know. The rule had been there for so long, it felt like reality. And I think many people live by invisible rules they never consciously chose. Don't disappoint anyone. Don't create conflict. Don't need too much. Don't ask for too much. Always be grateful and understanding. Always be available. The rules became so familiar, we stopped questioning them. Until one day we realize, I've been living by a contract I never signed. That realization can be uncomfortable because now the responsibility shifts, not blame, but responsibility. You begin seeing where you've abandoned yourself, where you've stayed silent, where you've over-explained, where you've agreed when you wanted to decline. At first, it's painful because awareness always is. It's difficult to see a pattern you've repeated for 20 years. But there's something freeing about it too. Because once you can see the pattern, you no longer have to confuse it with your personality. You no longer have to say, this is just who I am. Because maybe it isn't. Maybe it's who you learn to be. And if something was learned, something new can be learned too. That was the moment everything started changing for me. Not when I mastered boundaries, or when I stopped feeling guilty, or when I finally became confident. It started much earlier. It started the moment I became curious about my own discomfort. Instead of immediately talking myself out of it. And that's what we're going to explore next. Because the question isn't, how do you become less nice? The question is, how do you stay kind without disappearing? So, I used to think that healing would feel dramatic. A breakthrough, a huge realization, a completely different version of myself. But instead, it started with something much smaller. A pause. Someone asked me for something. Normally, I would have said yes immediately. This time, I stopped. Just for a second, long enough to ask, do I actually want to do this? That question sounds simple, but I realize how rarely I'd asked it. For years, all of my decisions had been filtered through other people. What would make life easier? What would avoid conflict? What would keep everyone happy? My own feelings usually entered the conversation last, or sometimes not at all. That tiny pause didn't change my life overnight, but it interrupted the pattern. And patterns lose power the moment they stop being automatic. I think that's what healing really looks like. Not becoming a different person, but becoming more honest. Honest when you're tired. Honest when something hurts. Honest when you need space. Honest when the answer is no. For a long time, I thought resentment was the problem, but now I see it differently. Resentment was usually showing me a place where I had ignored myself. A truth I didn't say, a limit I didn't communicate, a need I pretended wasn't there. The resentment wasn't the issue, the silence was. And once I understood that, I stopped asking, how do I stop feeling guilty? I started asking, what am I not telling myself? Most of the time, the answer was surprisingly simple. Maybe I'm tired, I need help, that bothered me, or simply, I don't want to do this. So, not dramatic truths, but just the honest ones. And maybe that's the real shift. Not becoming less kind, not becoming less caring, not becoming selfish, but finally including yourself in the circle of people you care about. Because the goal was never to stop loving other people. The goal was to stop leaving yourself out of the equation.